Hello, this is Vision Denial and World Watch, the first episode. My name is Sam, and for those who know me, I watch every single playoff series of all 11 participating regions. Yes, that includes that one. I'm doing things a little different this particular World Watch. I have started releasing things on TikTok, so I'll put a link in below about the link to the TikTok. So like that, whenever I watch a series and I finalized all the thoughts, I'm recording it then and there, and then into the ether, into the internet that I release it. This allows me to be a little bit more efficient with how I'm doing things, and on top of it, you guys can see it as I watch them. I like that if things start being a little weird and I'm not watching them in like right as they release, well, that explains probably a little bit why. Anywho, also, coming up will be a little bit of an intro that I put onto the TikTok that I put in. So if you see the jump cut and then that goes through, don't worry about it. Other than that, I will also have an outro in terms of like all of my thoughts during the week. For the moment in time being, I'm going to mention that the playoffs that I've gone through were from last week, starting from the 5th of August to today. That includes a total wham bam 4 series. The first week was really slow. But that comes from Latin America and Brazil. So you're going to see 3 from Latin America and 1 from Brazil. After that, next week has got like 4 times the amount of series. So without further ado, let's start the show, shall we? Hello. My name is Sam. For those who know, this is Vision Denial. If this is being viewed on TikTok, then hello. My TikTok channel is usually just a couple of cat videos and a bunch of D&D videos that I made. I'm going to be dedicating to this TikTok channel to a bunch of the playoff series that I'm watching. And for context, I run a YouTube channel called Vision Denial. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't worry, I'll get to that part soon. Where I watch every region that's qualifying, so currently all 11 regions participating in the World Championships for League of Legends. I watch all 11 of those regions' playoff series, every single one of them, yes, including that one. And so, most of the formats that I run here, it's the same kind of thing, same gimmick, all over the place. So, just as a context, the format usually is me introducing, saying a couple of things that have happened during the video, and then transitioning to a bunch of different reviews of every single playoff series. And I thought, for this particular run, I will just go straight to the punch for the TikTok. So every time that a playoff series is done and I've finished watching it and reviewed it, I will record my thoughts right off the bat and upload them straight there. For those on YouTube, you're watching this on YouTube, so I'm just this is going to look like nothing has changed, except that between takes, my shirt changes. And it'll give me a lot better approach to thinking about my thoughts right off the bat. So it'll still be slightly scripted and off the cuff, but mostly staying the same. So for those of you who stumble upon this, I should have at least one up, if not all of them up. Question mark. So between 1 and I don't remember how many games there are going to be. Did not count them because they've not fully announced every schedule yet. But the first playoff of the series is from Latin America, Infinity versus All Knights. And if you get the chance, go watch that video that I would have put up on TikTok. Otherwise, that's the first one we're going to do. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the playoff series that we have waiting for us. We start the first series of summer, the first best of 5 in LLA, Latin America, with Infinity versus All Knights. And as the first best of 5 series of the summer, this one could have been worse. It really could have been. There's some glimmers of interesting things happening. Infinity, for one, are very well aware of their win conditions and how to start setting up for certain neutral objectives. But it's fairly rushed, it's often disjointed, or left to the wayside in favor of, some plays that had zero setup at all. On the other hand, All Knights show some individual prowess amongst their players and some fantastic team fighting that helped save some of their games from being totally one-sided. But I find myself wondering how well All Knights would do if they had been more coordinated outside of their team fights. Uh, you know, that having just a little bit more initiative, they found themselves really like waiting off and hoping for a mistake out of the side of Infinity. On the other hand, neither team really had anything stand out from their vision game. And Infinity, who won 3-0, never kept any gold lead or ballooned it throughout. In fact, regularly losing them fairly handedly. Now, the standouts of this particular series are from Infinity, Chowny and Solid Snake, who, at the center of it, were equal parts the reasons for their leads and how they lost them, as both of them would charge in and opt in for fights that frankly should not have been chosen. Infinity, as they stand currently during this, as what I saw from this best of five in the playoffs, don't look like world contenders, especially not for the LLA. But, that could change if they start to fix a lot of their overzealous fight approaches and properly stick to their draft choices. With that, we just have to look for the next series. Up next, yes. We are still in the LLA. We've got Estral versus Team Ace. And I think the series is a little bit of better quality, mostly from the team that won. Now, if you were to tell me that Estral are the ones that qualify for Worlds in the future, I would not be surprised. This team showed some excellent approach to neutrals, vision, and early game pressure, much more than how they played in the spring playoffs. I would hope that their Game 1 play translated to the other two afterwards, where we found them being a little bit more brash and overzealous with their play. But, given how their opponents came in, it didn't make much of a difference. Ace, however, for their part, slightly baffled me. A lot of their coordination they showed us in spring have been completely lost. They showed some very poor vision play, made no strides to approach the win conditions they drafted, and often committed on some plays that were usually very high risk for very low reward. Looking at you specifically, Dimitri, who, despite his strides on trying to gain control of the momentum and was really the driving force of how their team's approach to the game really counted, really made some choices that I think were largely questionable. It's super unfortunate too, because the bot duo of Ace were also major shining stars for this team, especially across the series. And the team recognizes this as they regularly drafted for them. And, they just never played around them consistently. Game 3, they did try it, but it was some very lackluster approaches, which is really unfortunate. Now, standouts for this particular series are for Ace and Boogie, who really enabled much of how Estral won these different fights, how they approached the neutral setups, and the overall pressure that they were applying against Ace. It was really impressive, especially from Ace, who I hope they would give him more than just tanks, but he really makes a lot of work with how he uses the tanks for the teams. I'm hoping to see how Estral fare against a team that properly tracks Boogie in the early game and has a much stronger sense of priority on how to approach neutral objectives and visions, as there's literally nothing here that punished them in any way, shape, or form. And what we saw from Estral was great, but I'm not entirely sure this would make them world contenders. So let's see what's next with... We have, over here back in Latin America, Isirus Gaming versus Rainbow 7 in a nice 5-game series. The first 5-game series here for the summer playoffs. Although, mixed feelings about this particular series. Now, there is something to be said about some continuous improvement during a series. To me, it is a good sign for teams who want to go to Worlds to show some form of adaptation when approaching their best of fives, as how much time you have to adjust during the tournament is rather limited. Both teams here showed that concept, but not incredibly well. Rainbow Seven were the most proactive team during this entire series, but lost that kind of proactivity over time as Isirus got more and more proactive with time. They had like an inverse curve effect here. And both teams here showed moments of brilliance with their setups and vision, but they tend to revolve a lot of their plays around and the pacing of their game around neutral objectives as opposed to continuously accelerating the game. The vision was super inconsistent and the approach of the neutrals were lackluster at best, despite some of their moments of brilliance. Now, that said, Isirus Gaming did show a stronger aptitude around playing for their win conditions and drafting something that had very clear goals, while Rainbow Seven drafted a lot of awkward compositions, leading to a lot of upwards battles, even in games where they were severely ahead or found really solid avenues to play around. Especially for Game 5, I cannot wrap my head around the fact that in Game 5, you would pick such narrow engage options and also Seo, and to every marksman, every bot laner, stop picking Vayne. To me, that just tells me that you are saying you are so much better than your opponent, you will rock them against somebody that is with a champion that is just garbage for the vast majority of like the playtime. And it showed because they had a hard time even in this Game 5 to really get the ball rolling with it. Now, as it stands here, neither team here looked to match the same kind of energy that Estral showed on the previous series yesterday. But Isirus Gaming looked pretty prepped to show the same kind of continuous improvement they had in spring for this particular playoffs, and that's nice. Standout players for me are the duo on the bot side of Gavoto and Jelly, who played out of their minds to the margins at all possible moments. And a lot of the plays, the way that they were able to navigate them, increased a lot of the margins of success that many of these plays should have gone wrong, or a lot of the ways that they've been dove on should have gone wrong for them. I was very excited to watch Isirus Gaming in spring, and they continue to show the same kind of approach here, and I hope to see the improvement all the way to Worlds. So let's take a look at the next series. We now go to Brazil with the CBLOL, as we have in the lower bracket Kabum Esports versus the Miners. And holy fuck, this was one-sided. Excusing the swearing of any sort, the skill difference between both of these teams was as clear as night and day. At every level of play, vision, teamfight, draft, any approach to neutrals, even the approach to the win conditions, just huge gap in skill difference between both of these teams. Kabum had the Miners' number at every turn. Now, this felt more like a series in which the Miners were more than the clear underdogs, right? Taking a look at this, many people would have favored Kabum to win over the Miners, but I don't think this was like this much of a level, if not more. Kabum showed up and looked good, but how good are they actually versus them having an easy series is kind of hard to like really measure given this gap. In situations like these, we need to look at things that are measurable independently of the opponent to properly gauge the kind of scenario they'll have further into the series. For one, their vision playing alone was fairly solid. There are moments in which some of their vision was a little shallow, but as they found clever draft solutions around their shallow play and had very solid leads in which they just kind of like hugely blew up the way that they approached the vision, most of those issues disappeared. But they also benefited largely from the lack of any contest around neutrals or around anything ever during these games. making it super clear that the real challenge will come when Kabum faces off against the top 4 in the Brazilian region. And that this was just merely, pomp and circumstance for lack of a better term. Now, special attention should be given to House and Wiz, who honestly navigated the very limits of what they could in a lot of these fights so excellently that they're both so fun to watch. If you have any time, watch it just for those two alone. And with that, we'll go see the next series that comes up with. Right, so that's all of the series. We'll get the chance to watch all of the rest of them as they come down. Like I mentioned, about 16 series next week. I'll see if I can catch them all. I don't make any guarantees or promises, especially since next week almost every single one, all but one of the legacy regions start next week, which leaves a whole lot of things. I would usually at the end, and I will next week because we'll have a lot more data, but at this current moment, we don't have a lot of data about the current trends of things. A lot of these series were 3-0s, very one-sided, hard to measure a lot of things that are terms of trends for what we can go forward. But if anything is to be seen from Latin America, is that there's been a level up. It's really nice from their part. But the lower seeds from both Latin America and Brazil leave something to be desired so far. And that's totally fine. That's to be expected. Most of the region's lower bracket seeds are not super strong. And that's totally fine. And given from the roster of all of the teams that have qualified so far, which out of the 71 teams, last I checked, there are, I'm just going to pull off here. At the time that I'm recording this, there had been 54 out of the 71 teams have been qualified, and 2 teams are already eliminated. So, from this, I'm super excited to see what the rest of these teams have to bring. A lot of these games, I was a little worried as the patches had been rolling by that things would be a lot slower, but right now, they're looking great. I think games are going fast enough. There's only been one 15-minute game, which I dread to have watched the entire time, and I'm totally fine with that. So, with that in mind, I want to hear your thoughts so far. Out of everything that's to be expected, we only got Latin America and Brazil that got to play for some games, but next week we've got full swing with Korea, Europe, North America, the Southeast Asian leagues, as well as Australia, who has had a level up since, and those are going to be real exciting to watch, are all starting next week, which should be great. And I don't believe it's the only one starting next week. But out of all of the regions, we've got a whole bunch of them starting off. Full swing of things. And we're going to get a lot of really cool shit. So, I want to hear your thoughts. Any particular series that any of you are really looking forward to watching? Are there ones that you're kind of dreading? Anything and everything in between? And are there any trends you're predicting? Because so far, out of all of the different champions that have come up, Gwen, Azir, Silas, and Ari are the go-tos with some Talia and Wukong. Everything else seems a little bit more consistent with Sivir in the bot lane. I love Sivir metas. With that, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate those of you who have watched since the beginning of the year, especially when MSI had started. And I'm really excited to go through this as we go through the World Watch. And next week should have a lot to give. Have a good one.